how does the CFO actually, again, kind of balance it out? So those are, and what are the key metrics that one should be focusing on? If you can share some insights on that, that will also be really useful.
Yeah, interestingly, I think in most companies, the CFOs are the one handling the sustainability report.
Yes.
For some reason.
Yes, yeah.
In my view, that is a strategic report, and ideally the CEO should weigh in a lot more, but somehow because it's reporting, because it's SEBI, it comes under the CFO's agenda. But if you read either the sustainability guidance that we have in India or around the world, or the triple bottom line aspect, actually on the ground, all of it is interrelated and not mutually exclusive. Especially when you talk about labor rights, about gender diversity, about workforce rights. These are things that are looked at as guidance and value or cost adding items.
Yes.
Because you have to create opportunities for women, you have to provide for maternity benefits, you have to provide for daycare. But what they will do over a 3-year time, if implemented in spirit, is that they will create a work culture that's a competitive differentiator. And therefore, viewing sustainability not as compliance, but as how do you drive competitive differentiation, is, I think, the leap that Indian companies should take.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Again, healthcare example, it is very easy for us to save cost by saying we will reuse certain items. What does that do for the doctor's confidence, as well as what does that do for the patient's confidence and for their propensity to get infected, is something we have to look at. So that's what I mean by good cost. And I think over time, the right application and the strongly holistic application of an ESG framework or a triple bottom line framework is actually going to create exponential value in 3 to 5 years. But many companies may not have the patience to do it, because we have to deliver results in 3 months and defend our results every quarter, and everyone's looking for the 18% that Suresh sir is able to deliver in 17 days. So it's extremely difficult to convince management to stay that course. But for sure, if we stay that course, we will reap the benefit. And that's a journey I think India will take. There are global headwinds against ESG. I think all of you will be aware of that.
Yes.
They're saying it's too much of a tax on companies. But I think if some companies want to implement it intrinsically, it will lead to competitive differentiators.
Yes, so I think it's the duty of the CFO to actually educate.
Yes.
And that's where I think also the integrity and doing the right thing becomes something very, very important.
Being good and doing right should not be counterintuitive to making money.
Yes,
I think.
yes, and that's where your integrity also comes into play. Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Deepa. Vidya, to you. Now that you're more a HR professional, so what does your crystal ball say on the future of finance professionals? The future in the finance careers. What do you think that looks like, and how? We also spoke about upskilling and relearning and pivoting ourselves. So what was your take on that?
So a couple of things. I'll start with just hearing Deepa define some of the attributes that are required for a strong CFO. It didn't sound very different from what is required from a strong HR head. It didn't sound very different from what would be required from
level,
a CEO. And so I would say macro, I would like to see more CFOs become CEOs, because I think they are much closer to the detail. They have a handle on numbers. They are telling the story both internally and externally, and there aren't enough examples of that transition happening. So I do think at the macro level, that is one movement I would like to see more of. But at the micro level, when we think more more broadly, a few things that sort of come to mind, especially in an era where there is more AI, more digitization that is happening. I do think that roles within the regulatory and compliance space is going to increase because questions are going to be asked in terms of how we are using the insights that are being provided by these technological advancements, conclusions that we are drawing from them, decisions that we are making, new laws that are going to get passed that is going to govern this space. So I do think that's a broader space that we need to watch out for. Second, I would say, is analytics more broadly, whether that is data analytics, whether that is business intelligence, whether that is interpreting what is getting, thrown out from these complicated models that are getting built. And I'll share an example here, because we, in my previous organization, had worked on a model that would predict attrition. And we ran that for, a couple of teams, and we got a set of, outcomes and outputs from that, which basically, had a bunch of different attributes that combined what have you paid this individual, what is their like absenteeism, how have they gotten promoted, what are their ratings, 10, 15 different parameters, and then an overall rating is assigned to the individual. And the challenge became, what do you do with this information? Who do you talk to with that information? Because the temptation then became, okay, if you have a top performer, but their potential attrition score is high, suddenly managers want to sit and start engaging with them for no rhyme or reason. So the employee is wondering, why is my manager suddenly setting up one-on-ones and, wants to sit down with me? So, it's a very small example, and actually we didn't proceed with that because there was a worry on, if people get to know that you're featuring on that list, why are you featuring on that list? There was also no ability to attribute, very clearly saying, oh, they were, they are, even it was things like, which websites are they visiting? Oh. So even that data was getting captured. So if I am on Naukri.com multiple times, in a day, then that is getting captured in the, in the predictive attrition report to say, okay, this individual may be scouting for, other jobs. So I share that as an example to show how complicated it may be to interpret some of this information and use it to actually draw the right conclusions, because decisions start getting made and we start drawing conclusions from that. So I do think the broader space of business intelligence, analytics, I think is going to be important. The third category I would say is broader fraud. As we enhance this technological tools, there will be a lot within forensics, fraud analytics, fraud intelligence that I think will be, really important. And last, since we talked a little bit about ESG, I think it's a huge space, whether that's, ESG accounting, whether it is, how we are interpreting and presenting the data back to, our stakeholders, both inside and outside, huge scope there as well.
Wonderful, wonderful points you've mentioned, especially I think compliance that you mentioned, like SEBI and RBI, everybody's just tightening the regulations day after day. So I think it may be great to keep upskilling themselves. Yeah, definitely. And also on the ESG that you mentioned, ESG, my only concern is it there in spirit? A lot more important. So those are good to have, but it'll be great to really have all wonderful 4 points that you said, even the fraud aspect that you said, and the business analytics is picking up like anything. Would you also, do you think anything on the risk analysis, like, Deepa mentioned about the risk, do you think anything specific on that?
I mean, see, I think I link it a little bit back to analytics as a broader spectrum. And I'll say that from a hiring perspective, that's the one skill we struggle the most with because it's extremely competitive. There is, organizations one-upping each other on the amount of compensation that they'll be paying them. So absolutely risk as part of the broader analytics framework, 100% we will, need to invest. We'll need to upskill also because a lot of the risk today seems to be much more focused on financial risk, and reputational risk, etc. But we haven't really, touched the broader spectrum that we are talking about, right now.
Yes. Good. Thanks for that. Sridevi, to you. Since you're from the food industry, what is the role and the impact, the finance function creates, and what is the future scope? What do you think lies out there from the in the food industry? The future for finance professionals in food industry.
Play a very, very important role, mainly because people with zero knowledge in finance are the ones who jump into the, being an entrepreneur in food industry. Any person wants to be an entrepreneur. and I'm a faculty, I'm a culinary faculty in almost many of the colleges. So the first thing when we go and ask them is, what do you want to become after you finish your graduation? It's a 3-year course there. After 3 years, what are you going to become? They immediately say that they want to be a baker. Okay, bakery is a very, very expensive, just like a boutique industry kind of a thing. Bakery is the most expensive wing of a culinary art. You can even have a hot kitchen, but when it comes to bakery, the amount of infra you need to create is really, really very huge, for right from your baking tools to kneading. You have to have invest in a kneading machine to all that. And the kids sitting in the front row raise their hands and say, I want to be a baker. And I really want, I've actually represented to the institute deans that finance should be part of their curriculum. Actually, finance for non-finance professional is very, 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 very important, which people are not taking it very seriously. For instance, many of them, without any basic knowledge, they jump into the queue, and 3 months or 4 months of operations they will stumble upon, because they don't understand the working capital management. And they don't know the differentiation between a term loan and a working capital loan. They jump into the industry, they start their operations, and bankers treat our industry with always with a, I don't know how many bankers are here, finance persons in banks. So we are not treated well when we go for a loan, or because we don't give credit to the customers. It is on cash basis unless you are catering to a corporate. Rest of it is always cash and carry. So getting working capital from the banker means maybe he was high on something that you have managed the working capital loan. But term loan is possible, but getting a working capital loan from banks, traditional banks, is next to impossible. The next thing is collateral. Which is, it is, many of them talk about SME and all that, but those are all only in the paper.
Right.
So the practicality and the theory is totally different, and there is a huge gap in that matching the practice to theory. Because they say MSME or women entrepreneur, you get, the way it's been spoken is something like, it gives you a very rosy picture. But when you approach them, then they say, no, these are all the hidden things which you need to take care. Those are all the things which the entrepreneurs do not know. And for them to hire a CA, automatically that becomes an additional cost. So, and of course a CA also cannot do it free of cost. He is not pro bono. Yes. So all these make a big vacuum in the industry, and it's the most unorganized industry. As attrition and all, what I am dealing as attrition, my heart rate goes up. Or after I pay the salary to the team, the next day, am I going to get my team or not, is not in my hands at all. I'll have to pray all possible gods that at least 70% of the people to whom I've paid salary come the next day after the salary day. It's a most difficult industry. And because too many people have jumped into it, and there is a price war into it, and it's mainly because it's unorganized. Correct. So it's all over the place, and CAs have to, it's a very large role which we need to play and maintain balance there.
Right. Very interesting insights that you've shared, and in fact, it's a very, very good point that you said that students have to be taught on finance, finance for non-finance. In fact, yes. I do such workshops. My book, What the Finance, is more for people to make finance simple and easy for them to understand. So that's really, really nice. And also what appears to me is, since you said it's an unorganized sector and they lack the financial knowledge and the acumen to take the right financial decisions, what if they were to look at collaboration rather than competition? Probably like all of them together can I don't know, hire
No,
a CA or something like that?
That
Not yet
maturity
there.
is not yet come. Mainly, first and foremost, the moment you strike a conversation is, even if you're sitting like this and striking a conversation, you wouldn't know what the other person is thinking. Yes, because one taking away the recipes or taking the methods of presentations, so many intricate things are there which are out in the open. So that, and whenever you're working in a mall, for instance, you are giving, if you're not, I wouldn't call it the same food, but a similar food. When you're presenting the same similar food, what happens is there is always an intent to copy the other person's, because that will be the hot selling item of that person. So automatically, either they cut costs, let us cut corners and reduce the price of that, or give the same item in a different name. All that gets very, 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 very murky. So collaboration between two individuals, even though one is a baker, one is a hot kitchen person, that maturity has to come.
Yeah, that maturity hopefully will develop over the years.
The years.
Yes, because now if you look, most industries are talking about collaboration rather than competition.
Absolutely.
So I think it may be a good idea for it to come into this industry
when it
as
comes to regional food, there is no competition. So what happens is, when star hotels call us, and I'm from south, I do only south food. So somebody is called from west or called from northeast. So what happens is, it's a very, very healthy competition, because there is camaraderie and we get to know their food and we understand their food also.
Yes.
So that is a healthy competition. But within the region, I don't think so. Right now, the environment has been created for a collaboration.
Okay, mix. Good. Thanks for sharing that. Aparna, to you, what is, since you're from the tech, what is the impact of AI and Gen AI, and what are the opportunities and challenges that you foresee to upskill and enable financial transformation?
Okay. So I think 20 years back when I joined Wipro, I think the challenges that we faced was, how do you help the business scale? How do you handle complexity? How do you handle accuracy, timeliness? I think today those things are a given, right? Because gone are the days when you were only using Excel spreadsheets to produce data and insights. Over the last 20 years, with every wave of technology, we've handled disruptions and we've become ready for the next wave, right? And we've benefited from it immensely. Today, we are looking at AI that can completely be transformative in a way that none of the other technologies have truly been, right? We're looking at what can become completely automated. Can you have autonomous business processes which work right from start to finish on their own? Data and insights that she referred to in terms of HR. I mean, again, so much emphasis on predictive analytics. Handling risk is going to become so much more nuanced, right? Risk management and comprehensiveness of risk management practices is going to be very, very high, especially like even in our own internal audit function. Gone are the days when we would look at samples. Today we cover 100%. Even though we're such a large organization, some of the processes that we've been able to enable are trust-based processes that offer agility to the business user, because we know we have an operating risk layer that can comprehensively test for all risks, right? Because of everything is algorithm-based, and the kind of outliers that it throws up, right? For example, employee reimbursements. You're able to run so many of these algorithms on reimbursements and say these could perhaps be the outlier transactions where it should go through a human eye, right? And you're able to cut down. Today, we used to have this traditional concept of maker checker, right? Today, the maker is the tech, is the system, and perhaps checker will be the human in loop that we talk about, right? And once we know that process works, maybe we entirely remove the human, it is very much possible. I think the opportunities that we are seeing for AI in finance are like risk management, fraud detection, predictive. I think there is a Harvard business case that's done on how to predict revenues, which was actually initiated by us for our own function for Wipro, and then we took it for one of our clients, and it's done. So, the opportunities are limitless, ability to predict the kind of resources you need, the predictive modeling around revenues, predictive modeling around DSO, payment behavior, telling you where could the credit risk lie. Enormous benefit, enormous use cases. A lot of it is nearly at scale in many of these functions. So even contract metadata management, like, today I think the ability of a machine to read the entire contract and telling you what should be the revenue recognition model, we are looking at using like an equivalent of a chat GPT internally for finance, for non-finance. So someone puts in a query saying, this is my contract, what should the method of revenue recognition be? It will throw up. Or someone wants to know what is an internal policy about, right? What kind of credit terms can you offer your clients? The policy can be interpreted and then, used. So there are several test cases, use cases that we are using. And AI, and more importantly, generative AI, can be liberating. But that means that a lot of us here need to know how to work with the technology, need to know what is the shift we need to make in order to remain relevant and remain, someone who adopts it, who's a part of the opportunity, part of the solution, as opposed to feeling anxious and staying out. I think the biggest challenge that we have right now is how do we let people know that it is here and now and not somewhere in the distant future. I think there is general anxiety towards any change, and that's perhaps the biggest challenge. Two is the skills. I don't think today we have ideas, but to be able to execute, we don't have that kind of people, engineers who are also ready to contribute. So while some of the products are there that are off the shelf, not everything is applicable to your. So you still need to make sure you're investing, there is a pilot, there is an ROI to be looked at. So finding right skills, having people to, adopt the speed is perhaps the biggest challenge.
Nice. Do you also foresee any impact of robotics, machine learning, and ChatGPT on finance professionals?
100%, because, a lot of what we do today at the bottom of the pyramid, right, today is going to get, replaced by machines who can learn, who can deliver that. I think today we are already finding in a very high stake process or an outcome, we can use AI as an intern, which means they do it and then you check. But in a very low stake process or an outcome, let's say I have to handle, therefore these are all skills that people have to learn.
Absolutely,
and
essential.
they have to not just focus on the finance, they also have to focus on where technology meets finance. I think one of the things that we do is we have Python as one of the courses that we put our fresh chartered accountants to in their first 2 years, so that they get oriented towards technology. And of course, then it's a continuous process to learn.
Wonderful. Thank you. Last question to you, Deepa. And for any of the panelists, please keep them ready. And after Deepa answers, we will have a very quick round of questions with the audience.
Having a digital footprint, we have a digital twin. So all of that is adding to this. Specific to healthcare data, it's the most personal data that any of us has. None of us know what we are sharing. We are given a consent form at the hospital. It is an umbrella consent form, universal consent. What can it be used for? What can it be used for has been the question that big data scientists for the last 50 years have been dealing with in healthcare, especially. I think BFSI and healthcare are two large use cases for big data. They can use it for several things: population health studies, better drug better curative therapies. So they use data from all of us to build those things, and that's important and that should continue. What is it likely to be used for in this new consumer era? It can be used to tell you that they have a new medicine for diabetes. It can be used to tell you that you have to drink Karela juice. It can be used to tell you that you have to have a nutritionist consult to lead a better lifestyle. It can tell you many useful things. So even that should continue. But what it can also do is pierce the veil of transparency, and employers may start looking for employees' health data. They may start asking hospitals for reference checks on medical background. Or unethical medical providers may start providing that back to employers in an uninformed way. So you don't know what's going to happen with this. Already marriages, people want to do pre-marriage health checks, which is all right if both the parties know about it. But if one party is taking that information outside, the other value of it is this voyeuristic value. You know how for VIPs we're all interested in health information, what is happening to them, and peering into their records. You recently saw in England how the royal family's records were exposed. So as a culture, we do not believe in health privacy. That's also a problem. When I work in healthcare, I get so many calls from twice removed people saying that my friend is admitted, can you give me an update on his health status? I'm very concerned. It comes from a place of concern, but it's actually not allowed. So we are not allowed to share data about personal health information with anyone other than the patient. Now, the big shift that's happening in India regulatorily is that we are building a consent-based platform, the National Health Stack, which means that me as Deepa owns the right to consent to any use of data, my health data for any purpose. Now, the problem begins when that is not adhered to, right? And let's imagine you are a diabetic and you've had a history of diabetes and your HbA1c is 8 and you're ordering Rasgulla on Swiggy. Just imagine if these two things can be connected. It is a very simple example, but it goes to prove how much unethical behavior can be fostered through this data being freely floating everywhere. So I think we are all taking a very serious view of the DPDP Act, which has been enacted last year. We are awaiting the rules. But the fundamental point of this act is that use of all digital data, not just health, all digital data will be private and consent based. And the consent cannot be universal consent. You cannot ask, I can use this data for academics, research, clinical trials, marketing, upselling, selling you juice. I cannot take such an umbrella consent. I have to take a very specific consent. So as individuals and as empowered individuals who are in this group, all of you have a right to determine what your data can be used for the specific purposes that you're consenting to. And if that is not clear, you can decide not to consent at all and hold that data with yourself. The upside of such a national platform, for all health data at least, will be that you don't have to carry your medical records when you're shifting cities, you're shifting hospitals, you're shifting provider, you're going to a clinic and then going to a hospital. All that data should be seamless, should be visible to everyone that you are providing that access. So that there are good things and bad things about what is to come. And I think, like I said, if there are ethical people guarding that gate, and that's where the CFO's role will come in this, because he has to ensure that the rules and the governance match. The CFO cannot take full accountability because this is a right down the ground responsibility of every individual working in the organization. All we need to do is that there are enough safeguards and layers that make sure that we have the framework in place to adhere to this, and outliers will always have to be monitored. But I think in general, using personal data has become a big business model, starting in the Silicon Valley. So all of us have to be very, very particular about what data we are allowing on the phone, what data we are allowing in our mail, and what data we are allowing in healthcare or in retail stores when we go to shop, what is the data that we are allowing them to capture. So this, the penalty for every instant of violation, as it stands today, DPDP Act, we don't have the rules, so we don't know, but the penalty is 250 crores for every violation. Oh. If it is found that there was no system that was protecting against such a violation, the penalty can be 250 crores, which will wipe out the EBITDA of many companies. So it's a big thing, but it's evolving, and in the next 5 to 10 years, you will see a big shift.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. I think lovely insights you shared. And like you said, everything has its own pros and cons. But this 250 crore penalty that you're talking about seems really very steep. But I think definitely organizations need to add on. And I think, yeah, and like Vidya mentioned, I think this is another scope for finance professionals in their careers for them to watch out for that. Yes, thank you so much. You want to add on?
Yes, I think as more and more companies adopt AI, I think responsible AI framework and how you are setting that up for yourselves is a very important aspect. We spoke about ESG, right? I think there is a framework that most large, at least large caps in BSE or Nifty today have a framework, and they put out a vision, and they're getting there right now. Credibility, reporting, accuracy, all that will follow. But as far as AI is concerned, and she spoke about something that's very, very relevant, data privacy, right? That is absolutely key. Like they say, if you think there's something free, then you are the product. Absolutely. Your data is the product. Absolutely. And that's where you should be very wary of as an individual. And especially for companies like us, having a responsible AI framework, which includes, explainability of AI. Any kind of an AI-based product or service that I come, how are we able to explain it? Explainability and transparency is one pillar. The second pillar is confidentiality, data privacy, aspects like data redaction. How do you make sure the data is anonymous and used exactly for what the consent is provided? Three is intellectual IP protection. I think, that's the biggest risk that we have as we adopt more and more products, saying, how do you make sure your IP is protected? And finally, hallucination of these models, right? Accuracy, basically. How do you contain that? Those are some of the pillars of responsible AI, which become far more critical, when you're looking at that. Also becomes, in some sense, a mandate for CFOs in future. Wonderful. Like you've got to participate in it.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. All of you shared some amazing insights. I'm sure audience would be really thrilled.